Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Beth Bell Live. I'm happy to have you here. If you're watching live with me, I would love to know what's on your heart and in your mind, or on your mind and in your heart. Please put any question in the comments having to do with relationships, to love, and to life, and I will channel the insights and provide answers and insights to some of life's most difficult questions, and sometimes the easy ones too. If you're watching on replay, you can always submit in the comments, or you can go over to bethbell.me/question and submit your question there. It's a little more private, but I have to say that I love having your engagement here live on the channel. So oftentimes your question is very similar to someone else's question. So please don't hesitate to put a question in the comments, because I have a feeling it's going to help you, but also probably a lot of other people. All right. I decided a couple of weeks ago that I would share, when inspired, a little bit about something going on in my life. And so something came forward this morning that I wanted to bring forward. Yesterday, I was at the Writers Festival here in San Diego, and just a really incredible group of people, very inspired writers, some really big name people, and a lot of people who are just starting out on the journey of writing and trying to figure it all out, to tell their stories. And so it was fun to be in the energy of all of these wonderful individuals wanting to share. Now, there was also a subsegment of those people that were all about spirituality and consciousness. And I was fortunate to be able to go to a dinner with them, the speakers from the panel and some others from the community. And as I sat there, I thought, this is just really an incredible opportunity to be able to speak so freely about everything. And I was in gratitude at the dinner table. It was actually quite a large group of us, and we tried to mingle around a little bit. But it was a space and a place where no matter where you are on your journey, you could say what was on your mind and in your heart. You could bring up topics, and we talked everything from consciousness to aliens to new age technology to 3D things that are happening in our lives. And it was just so fun to have that freedom, because when we're out in the world, I'm assuming that most of you, all of you really, that are watching the show, have some real desire to help self-improvement, to help your awakening journey and your ascension journey. So that's not always the case when we get out there in the real world. There's a lot of people out there that just aren't interested in waking up. They're not interested in doing their deeper inner work. They're addicted to their suffering, and they don't know how to get out, and they don't want to get out, and they want to numb themselves. And so I think for all of us who are deeply immersed in our spiritual awakening journey and looking for more community and more acceptance, and just finding other people that are vibrating at a similar resonance with us, I think it's so important that we prioritize this in our life, that we actually prioritize getting together and doing things with people in our community that we know are a vibrational resonance to us, not just the things that are on our social calendar because maybe our children have it, or it's a play date for our dogs, or it's a habit, but that we actually really look for these conscious groups of people, that we look for the people who really want to be a part of our awakening journey, not just be the derailers, not just be the naysayers, not just be the ones that want to create drama for us. Because when that drama happens, it's always nice to have that really incredible group of people to go back to and to be able to talk it out and say, hey, what was the lesson in that for me? Like, why did I call that in? And also to be able to just talk about very vast, expansive concepts that may not be accepted by a lot of people. So I highly encourage you. I feel so grateful from last night. I highly encourage you to really consider, like, how much of my time is spent in conscious community, in a community with people who are deeply on their journey, because it really helps to support what it is that we're doing and where we're at, and to be able to hear ourselves talk about our own awareness and maybe identify places that, oh gosh, maybe I could expand there, or maybe I was too contracted, in this idea. And so having those conversations ongoing throughout our life are so helpful for us. All right, I do have a lot of questions that are submitted today, so I don't want to go on too much about that, but finding conscious community, I think, should be number one priority for many of us, because as things get more crazy and more chaotic, We need each other, and we need to have that really safe place and space to go in and just talk about things from a different perspective. Okay, let's jump into the first question here. Okay. Is companionship a good stage for a marriage relationship? Or is it important to strive for more romance or insights within the boundaries? Yeah, I think there's some interesting things here that aren't answered. So if you're on live or you're watching on replay, you can always add a little bit more detail. I think when you're asking about a marriage relationship, I'm assuming that you've been married for a little while, and you're asking about romance and companionship. So it feels like there's perhaps, dare I say, a staleness to what's happening in the relationship. Now, you can be really, really great companions and not be stale. But I'm feeling that there's maybe the word isn't stale. Maybe the word is a stuckness. There's something where it feels like you've both got a little bit of your heels in the ground, and you're trying to stand your own ground, and you're sort of saying, well, let's just compromise on companionship for the relationship. And it's so important that in relationship, if this is your marriage, or this is, for others, if this is someone that you've been with and you're committed to, that having the romance is really important. Having the deeper conversations, getting deep into insights. You ask about insights specifically. That we don't just sort of let this be a comfortable companionship relationship. Of course, it's nice to have our beloved as a companion, but at that point, then there's a lot of people in our lives that are companions, so to speak. And I think that what you're really calling out for is a shift in your relationship, something that is taking you guys to a different place, because it feels too comfortable. It feels too laissez-faire. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in a way that maybe it's tired. Maybe you're feeling too tired to actually do something more than companionship. And while there's times in our relationships where we may have to just sort of dip out of the work together and do the individual work, I would just be cautious that if that goes on for too long, that then you become very, very independent from one another. And it's so important that we have our independence in relationships, and that we're not dependent in our relationships, but it's that real interdependency that's so important in relationships. And that also comes with romance. That comes with the spark. That comes with unity. Now, I know after years and years, sometimes that can be harder to cultivate, that deep spark. But I think if you're really working together in the relationship to cultivate that desire for one another, but also that knowingness of knowing who that other person is, and finding that to be so special, to know someone at a soul level, because there's not very many people out there in the world that you've built that kind of relationship with, because it's something, I don't want to call it special, but I'm going to call it special. And what I mean by that is that it is unique, and it is sacred. I think sacred is the better word for that, because special brings in a different connotation that I think we don't necessarily want to deem relationships to be so special. But I think that there's a sacredness, because there's a soul bond there. And if you've fallen into just the companionship part, I think that's getting a little bit on the lazier side of what we're actually in monogamous, long-term committed relationships for, because we want to keep going deeper. We want to keep going deeper into the abyss of our fears, and of our big love, and of our own quandaries, and questioning about life, and why we're here, and what's happening, and how this impacted me. So if we kind of move into that like more companionship energy, I think it really leaves the doors open for both of you to possibly find someone else. And I'm not saying that to scare you, but I think that just sort of says, hey, we're kind of giving up on us. And again, you can take a pause. So it doesn't mean that you can't go through these ebbs and flows, but I just would caution to get too comfortable with companionship. I think that romance doesn't have to be hard work. I think that sometimes we have to start cultivating it in different ways because we do kind of fall into habits. And so maybe that's another tip for you, is that you shake things up a little bit. Maybe you bring back something that you guys used to do that created romance for you, so that you can easily just fall back into that memory cell of, oh gosh, when we did this, it was so romantic, or it was so fun, or, even reminiscing in those old memories that are super fun and romantic, and were maybe in the beginning of your relationship, or maybe at some point in your relationship. That can be helpful just right there and then. And maybe it's that you put together a camera roll, what do you call it? An album in your phone, that you put some of your best memories in, and you do it individually. Let's come up with five pictures from the past that are about us. It's so easy now to do this, right? In our phones, we can just type in people's names and it gives us all the photos. And maybe you choose 5. These are my top 5. And then maybe you choose a day of the week that you say, hey, this is going to be sort of like our date night, or our romance night. And let's just pull up these pictures and just reminisce. So it's not that you even have to go anywhere. And it's not that you have to, create some big date, but you might just have that date where you just talk about the good old times. And maybe there's another date where you talk about what you would like to experience in the future. And maybe you come up with, like, what are 5 locations around the world that you think and I think would be really romantic. And you spend a little time doing that, again, individually. And then you come with the curiosity to your, I'm calling it a date, but it could be a dinner. It could be, but something that you sort of deem as like a special time where you're actually going to take time out to talk about this, and that you're going to actually prepare for it. Because what that does is not just give you something to do, but it actually starts to set an intention energetically in your heart and in your mind to think about the other person, and to think about your relationship with the other person, and why was that memory so much fun? What did they do? Gosh, when you held my hand on the bridge in Venice, or when we had that gelato and it spilled down in the front of your shirt and we laughed about it. It's like those little things that can really be fun to reminisce over. And I think sometimes we just don't do that enough. I'm not saying live in the past. I'm just saying reminisce about the good moments to bring back some of that spark, and then talk about new opportunities that can come in the future. But the most important thing is to stay in the present. And to do that, I think what's so easy and can be so fun and yet so difficult all at the same time is to have, let's just call it a tantric date. That if you actually had a date with your partner and you said, we're not going to talk about anything, and you just do some soul gazing. If you haven't done soul gazing, it's super easy. But again, what are the eyes? They're the windows to the soul. So you have to show up, and you have to be present, and you have to make eye contact, which means you can't be looking away. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be, you have to be present. And in that moment of now, when you're present with that person, then I would allow yourself to just feel into your own body. What am I feeling? I do this exercise not on a tantric level, but on a connection level in a couple of different groups that I go to. It'll often be an exercise that the people running the groups will have us do. And I just find it so fun and so interesting, because a lot of people, depending upon where you're at, it's not a judgment. It's just like, hey, we all have our different things. They don't want to make that eye contact. Or once they do, it just really makes them feel vulnerable. And so that's really the point, is that you want to get to that vulnerable space where you're like, yeah, I want you to see me and I want to see you. And so you can take that moment right there to now. It doesn't require anything but your presence and your desire to want to connect, and feeling into your body and feeling, is there anxiousness? Is there an emotion that's coming up? And you may have no idea why, but I would encourage you to not push that emotion down. So if you start to feel something, especially for the person asking this question, that I feel from the question that there's an achiness in your heart, that companionship isn't enough. And I guess there's a couple of things that I didn't exactly address here, because it says insights within the boundaries. So I think, boundaries can be really great, but I get the feeling when we're saying boundaries that we're trying to build walls. And so what we ultimately want to do is break down the walls. And I know after years of marriage, sometimes that can be a challenge because there's just so many things that have happened over time that we can't even quite get to what they are. So if we spend that time, I think really just looking into each other's eyes and being present with one another, I feel like you're going to find there's going to be some deeper things that come of it. And yeah, it's an exercise, but try not to think of it as an exercise. Think of it as a connection point and of a sacredness between the two of you. And if it's helpful, if you're feeling like it's a difficult situation, I would also encourage that as you're looking at each other, that perhaps before you start, that you talk about the love that you have for each other in whatever capacity and whatever level it's at, romance or just deep love or wherever it is, and just envision it as a ball of light in between the two of you, and ask each other to feel with your heart into that ball of light so that you're connecting from your heart center, heart to heart, while you're making the eye contact. Because I think that's going to also drop you in a little bit more, a little out of the head. Because the other thing that happens when we do this eye gazing is our mind starts racing like, oh my gosh. I mean, if you're a woman, you might be, there's like always silly things like, do they see my wrinkles or, is my eye makeup bad or whatever? Like there's all these crazy things. Is my hair out of place? And that's just the mind. And so just keep letting the mind just fall away and come back to that heart center and come back to that glow in between the two of you. And that's going to anchor you back in. So it feels like, I don't know, just I would perhaps consider releasing the word boundaries and think about this as more of an openness exercise. Now, what is good without settling? Now, you actually know this question better than I do because it's you that knows what it is that you need. And so if you're not getting what you need, no, you shouldn't settle. You've got to communicate, hey, this is what I need. Now, keep in mind, there's different love languages. And so your love language may not be the same as your partner's. Chances are it's not. Yours might be touch. Theirs might be communication. Someone else's might be gifts. And so it's understanding, well, what is it that really makes my partner feel valued? And then having them understand yours. Now, if they're not interested in understanding yours, then I think you've got a whole different situation on your hands. So if that's the case, let me know if you're watching on replay or live, and I can comment on that more. Or you can also schedule a session to go deeper and more specifically into your situation. But I do think that settling is not the goal. It's not about settling ever in relationship. Yes, there might be compromises to some degree, but it's a deeper understanding of the other person and then honoring how they're different than you are. And oftentimes we get stuck in this pattern of wanting them to understand us. We want them to know what we want, but we also have to make that effort on a daily basis, on a minute-to-minute basis of, well, wait, what is it that you need? And sometimes just stopping to ask that question just stops both parties to say, oh gosh, okay. So I would just, the word settling for anything doesn't resonate for me, for you in this situation, because I do think that we can have conscious compromises, which aren't things that make us feel like we're giving something up per se, because what we're giving to our partner is also giving to us, because when our partners are happy, then we're happy. And when we're happy, our partners are happy. So it's sort of that kind of consciousness and engagement with our partners that we want to come back to. And I know the world gets crazy and things happen and it's hard to have these times. But what I'm saying is, just like meditation, nobody has time for meditation. Well, not nobody, but that's oftentimes the excuse is I don't have time. And so we have to make time. We have to set aside time for this. And if your relationship is important, which I think that it is, then finding and making the time to have that sacred soul connection with your partner is what it's all about. Because you and them know each other like nobody else probably knows you. And if that's not the case, then you got a lot of talking to do and a lot of insights to gain about each other. And another thing that comes forward, like another, idea is maybe you just ask your partner, like, what's one thing that's on your mind right now that you really don't want me to know? And see what comes forward. They may not be able to share, but they might. What's one thing that you really don't want to talk about right now? And then you have to honor if they really can't talk about it. So I'm not saying that you're doing it to force, but I'm saying that, there's just ways that we can kind of come around things in a softer way that doesn't feel like we're having to have these big conversations, or that we just need to make it light and fun and friendly and not keep it in the companionship bucket. I think that's dangerous. I think that's dangerous for any partnership. Without having intimacy, without having whatever, whether it's kissing or touching or sexual activity, that is a risky place to be, because that's why we're in relationship, is to have and honor that unity that we can achieve with our beloved. So yeah, okay, I know I've gone on about that, but I'm really advocating for you to not allow the settling and not to allow this companionship idea to settle in, because I think that if that's really where your partner wants to be, then there are some deeper conversations that need to come. Give it some time. I don't think anything needs to be acted on right away, but give it a little time, and then be sure to continue to speak your truth, because there's also something in that as well for you. I feel that there's things that you either haven't said or that you are saying, but maybe just you need to switch the angle a little bit as to how you're wanting to be heard, and maybe hearing them before being heard. Okay, let's go on to the next question. All right. I'm in a committed relationship with my boyfriend of 2 years. We get along super well, and I feel we are both in love with each other. What bothers me is that sometimes he does things that feel possessive. In those moments, it feels like he's trying to control me, and I don't like it. What do you think, and how can I call his attention to it? Well, without specifics on what it is that you're feeling is possessive, I'm going to speak to this very generally. Possessiveness from a man could actually be them wanting to be your king and wanting to sort of be that person for you. So just really feel into this and see if, where is it coming from with my partner? And sometimes it truly is a sense of possession, because they are most likely feeling that there is an insecurity, a vulnerability, and they're wanting to know exactly what you're thinking, where you're at, and sort of controlling the premises of, their property. Of course, you're not their property. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying that there is a bit of a mentality that sometimes can come in. It comes with women too. I mean, especially, I think this is one of the biggest downfalls of the idea of marriage, is that who hasn't either been in the situation themselves or witnessed it from the outside in other people's marriage, where everything's great, they get engaged, everything's great, they get married, everything's great, and then boom. And I got to say, ladies, it's oftentimes the women that want to change the relationship dynamic once they're married. Like, everything changes. It's like, well, how did that happen? Your guy stepped up, he wasn't planning to change, and then all of a sudden you're expecting something different from him, or you're being different. And so I think that that marriage component is it's a lovely idea, but I think that we need to still really anchor in. I know I'm getting off topic a little bit on this, but it's the possessive part that is leading me off, that we sometimes also have different expectations then of our partner, which is not helpful. It's not helpful to expect them to read our minds. It's not helpful to expect them to do certain things. So just, I'm saying this to sensitize you in the role that you might be playing in the behavior that may or may not be truly possessive, that you just really feel into, why would I be asking them to play this for me? And it might be that you have some insecurity in there, and that they're actually reacting to a way that you are with them in the relationship. Now, if it's truly possessive, then I would come back to your partner and state very clearly, when you did this, it made me feel, and then feel into what is it that you're feeling. Like, you have to get really, really in the know about how it makes you feel, and then offer. And I either wish you would stop, or I think it would be lovely if you did, right, X, Y, and Z. When you do this, it makes me feel, and I wish you would either stop or give them a suggestion as to what they could do differently. They may not know. It may just be, it's 2 years you've been in this relationship. We build patterns, and that's why, it's so important in the beginning of a relationship that you get into the depths of all of this stuff that comes forward, because it's old stuff. It's stuff you've carried all your life. It's how you learned about love. And so when we get into relationship in the beginning, we get this great opportunity because we're still in that super love and all that really fun phase where we're willing to do the work. We're willing to feel it. We're willing to talk about it. And if we don't, and we don't do the hard work up front in whatever relationship, it comes up later, but it comes up time and time and time again. And it's always just peppered with so many stories and so many memories. And women, we know that we have this like photographic memory most of the times, where oftentimes the man is like, what are you talking about? That happened 5 years ago or 6 months ago. It's like, it's just not even in their mind, which is a great trait to have in some respects. But I know for oftentimes, speaking more generally about men and women, the women just have this ability to remember because they're probably oftentimes more in touch with their emotion. And so it's the emotion that they're feeling. And so I'm also feeling this about this possession idea, that there's something, an emotional attachment. And it could also be that there's a wound attachment with this. So you've got to really feel into what is your shit and what is theirs. And I don't even want to call it shit because, it might just be like a softness. It might be, like I said, it could be like super, super manly man. Like, I want to be the provider. I want to provide for you. I want to protect you. I want to be that person for you. So be careful to not shut down perhaps an activity from your partner that is coming from a really wonderful place. And they're just not seeing it as possessive. And maybe with a little tweak, a different word, a different movement, it can feel much more healthy for you. So definitely a good question, because I think sometimes possessiveness can come, especially as we're moving into more longer term relationships. And, part of that possession also comes from just not wanting to be heartbroken. People want to hang on to love, and love isn't something to hang on to. Love is something to experience. Love is something to grow. Love is something to let go at times. So love is alive. It's not stale. You can't control it. You can't keep it. You can't buy it, right? We know all these things, but that's why possessiveness never works. It just doesn't work out in the end, because there's not an unconditional giving and receiving of love. So it's great that you're picking it up. You're only 2 years in, so that's the good news. I mean, well, you're 2 years in, but it's also good news because you're 2 years in. I think you're at a perfect spot. You're beyond the honeymoon and you're building a stronger foundation. And this is also the time where, did you say you were married? I think you're just in a relationship with them. So you'll find out from them in how they respond to you if the foundation that you've built is strong enough for a longer term future. Maybe that's the way to approach this too, is that since this is bubbled up for you about possessiveness, that you guys just really get into it and just talk about what your experience is with the relationship and the foundation of the relationship. And is it serving you? And where isn't it serving you? Because you might just uncover a vulnerability or something with your partner that gives you great insight into their psyche. Because as I said earlier, that might be something that you're doing that is making them feel like they need to hang on a little bit tighter because they're unsure of something in your mind. And if they don't have the emotional intelligence or the skill set or the muscle, they haven't practiced speaking their truth or asking questions or They're just really good at just going about their day and not really tuning into their own heart, they could be really off. So help them know where is it that their heart is at, and where is their mind, and what are their thoughts, and what are the rabbit holes that they're going. And last thing I'll say is sometimes us women, we make things into really big deals, and they don't have to be. So when you approach it with a man, I don't know if there's men out there that want to comment on this. Like, I think men hate it when women cry, especially if they've caused it. And they're also petrified when a woman says, honey, we've got to talk. Because they're like, oh God, what's coming next? And so soften, how you get into this conversation with your partner, because I think that, I think sometimes we as women, and again, I'm speaking very generally, but maybe more from the feminine, that we come in hot with emotion, and we want to be heard, and we want to get through something, but we have to think about our partners and how do they need to receive it. What's the best way to do this, and where's the best place to do it? Sometimes it's on a walk. Sometimes it's not sitting on the sofa and making it so hardcore. A story is coming to mind that I'll share really briefly. It's a very short story, but a dear friend of mine used to work with kids that I don't know if they were in orphanages or if they were just in, I think they were in, what do you call them when you've been bad and you're like I can't think of the name of it, but so the therapists were trying to get the kids to talk. And so one of the ways that they did it was they went out and they would shoot basketball hoops together. They just, out there on the court and just kind of casually, and maybe this is a good technique for all teenagers, I don't know, but the correction facility, I think is what it was. And so, you just keep talking as you're doing an activity that's sort of mindless, because it kind of gets you into a different space. It doesn't feel so heavy. And it opens up our hearts a little bit sometimes to not be so heavy into the conversation. And so that might be a way to enter into it. I'm not saying you go play basketball with your husband or your partner. I'm just saying there might be something like a walk, or, I don't know, you jump in the pool, or you go into the ocean, or something that is a little bit mindless, but that allows for the energy to keep moving between the two of you. Okay. All right, let's keep moving along. Okay. My wife and I have been married for over 20 years. We get along okay, but we have a cycle of criticism that we can't seem to stop. It's constant and annoying. I'd like to get this resolved, but how? Yeah, I think, this happens in a lot of relationships, whether it's our romantic love relationships, our partners, or our friends, because, I don't know what the phrase is exactly, but it's something about the most you treat the worst. It's a phrase, something like that. And it's really that we do overstep our boundaries with people that we love. And after we've done it for so long, it does become a habit, and it feels just, I don't want to say natural, because it's not natural, but it just happens. And so what I would recommend that you do is only focus as best you can on your critique. What are you critiquing them of? Because as we know in relationships are only a mirror. So if you're critiquing them on something, there is something inside of you that's wanting to be heard and seen by you. There's something within you that you want and need to change. It may not be the direct thing that you're criticizing your partner for, but there's something in there. And secondly, I would say that oftentimes this banter and this criticism is simply because neither one of you have felt heard for so long. And so another example comes to mind. I remember someone was telling a story about how, actually, I think it was Tony Robbins that said, how do you get someone's attention the fastest? And he said, you pull a gun on them. And I was like, wow, that was kind of heavy. But he was speaking to people who needed to be heard, and that what they really needed was attention. And so it comes out in a very harsh, critical way. And I know that's kind of a bizarre analogy, but I think that's kind of what it feels like is, these knives that we pull out in relationships sometimes. And the cuts that we make with criticism. And that's not helpful. I mean, death by 1,000 cuts is not helpful in our relationship. So the only way we can really truly stop this is to stop ourselves first, pointing out what they're criticizing us about, and pointing it out for ourselves, like recognizing, ooh, they said that to me. Let me just feel into that, later, and journal about it. Like, why are they saying that to me? And what about that is true? What thread of that is true? And really trying to feel into it, because that thread that's in there that feels like it's so not you. There's something there. And so whether it's you criticizing them or them criticizing you, just dig into it. And I would recommend you do it during journaling, because oftentimes what's happening in that back and forth criticism is you're just going at each other. You're not listening. You're not actively listening. You're not empathically listening. You're just having a little bit of a tiff with each other. All right. I see that there's some other things coming in. I just want to, okay. So I think that's the next question, but, so I think it's just really important that you bring awareness to it. And I would tell your partner, I would say, look, I don't want this criticism anymore. I don't want to give it to you. I don't want to dish it out, and I don't want to take it anymore. I'm going to work on me. Would you be willing to commit to working on you? And find out from them. Are they willing to work on them? Are they willing at the end of the day to, and maybe you also have a code word, just have a word like, or, a gesture that is loving, as opposed to like, I wouldn't come up with this, or I wouldn't come up with a stop, or, a word that has a negative vibration to it. I would come up with a word that has a love and an intention and something more to it that helps diffuse the energy of the criticism and acknowledges all at the same time, like, ooh, wow, I just slipped back into that pattern that I don't want. And it's a commitment, though, to do this. You've spent, what did you say, 20 years? Was that you that said 20 years? Creating this behavior and creating this dynamic with your beloved. It doesn't often happen overnight. It can, but usually the times that it happens overnight is when you almost lose someone. Maybe they have an accident or something bad happens. Don't let that happen. Time is too short. Life is too short. And there's too much beautiful life that we can have with people who are committed to us and our growth and our happiness, to not spend the time and make the time to overcome these patterns that were created that just aren't serving either one of you or your relationship as a whole. All right. Hopefully that's helpful. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts in the comments. Okay. We've got another question coming in from a live viewer. I recently started seeing and sleeping with someone. When we are together, my body feels so good, so safe, and adored and desired. He really awakens my Kundalini energy. But the next day, when he is gone, I feel sadness. How can I deal with the huge oxytocin rush and then the inevitable crash? I love this question because I can feel so much of the emotion behind it. A couple of things are coming to mind, and some of them are more for the collective, and then I'm going to come very specifically to some things in here. We as women have this incredible gift oftentimes, and I know this is the case for you, to just love so deeply and to share ourselves with so much emotion. And that is all phenomenal and good. And don't stop that unless someone is not holding your soul like a fragile egg. Unless someone is not there with you, knowing that you are being that vulnerable and appreciating you in that vulnerable state of, I'm assuming it's sexual intimacy when you said sleeping with someone. I'm assuming that means that you're having intimate sex with them. And because we are such emotional beings by nature in the feminine, that creates a lot of bonding. It's the bonding that we are given as a woman so that we can have the survival of the species, which is that we can have children and we can care for them and we can want to do everything we can to help them and love them and save them and all of that. But then there's, the side of the male and the masculine that can oftentimes have sexual intimacy as a sexual act. Now, I'm not saying that's the case here. I think that they can also be very intimate with us. They can give us their heart and their soul in that situation because they have an innate feeling of wanting to procreate and to experience orgasm and to experience themselves as a man. And so while all of that is good, there is an imbalance oftentimes between men and women. Now, the best situation typically is when we have a commitment from both people to be in this loving, intimate space with some expectation of what's happening on the backside, meaning that it's not and I'm not saying this for you, but a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, that we really know what it is. Now, if it's, a deep committed relationship, then you've got so much more on the other end that is nourishing and fulfilling, and that keeps that going, that connection. Because when we have intimacy with others, we do get on each other's ethereal life cords. So it's natural and normal to have this longing and this sadness. And yes, you're absolutely right. Like there's massive amounts of oxytocin that come through us through orgasm and through intimacy with someone else. And so depending upon the agreement that you have with that partner, if it's a beautiful friendship that also possibly has some benefits, that can be harder for women because it's harder to sort of let it go and not feel like, well, I want to know what that means to our bond. And sometimes men are better at it. They're like, yeah, I don't really need to know what it means to our bond. It's like when I'm with you, I enjoy it. And when I'm not with you, I'm doing my thing. And so that is sort of the nature of it. Not always, of course, for all you super conscious men out there, it can be very different. And sometimes the roles are reversed. But I think what's coming is you've got to really anchor into this blissfully neutral state within yourself and raising the oxytocin levels within yourself and finding different ways that also fill that rush for you. I don't even feel like rush is the right word, but if you're, this is what's coming. If you're a rock star and you're out on stage in front of thousands of fans and you get all of that hormonal rush that comes, and then afterwards, like you're also feeling like, oh wait, there's a sense of depletion. So what's so important in that situation, I'm just using it as a kind of a bizarre link to this because I know it's very different than intimacy, but it's still the same. Since you said oxytocin, it's still in the vein of talking about brain chemistry. It's about talking about our reaction to things and wanting to feel connected to others, wanting to fit in. We can talk about dopamine hits with social media, belonging and friendship. And so let's bring it back to the intimacy of this particular situation, that it's finding the self-soothing ways of going, ooh, I'm a little bit into the fantasy now, the fantasy of what I want this to be versus perhaps what you've agreed for it to be. And finding ways, there's other ways that you can feel this love within yourself, because the love is always within you. This intimacy is always within you. This connection is a beautiful gift coming from this person, but it's also letting it go. And I'm telling you, like, if you're not in the committed relationship, which I think is the case here, this is such great practice for long-term committed relationships, because we start to build that toolbox where it's not like, this is a terrible image, but like the drug thing, like, like give me more, because that's not what we want in relationships. We want relationships to be in a place, and I feel like this is for you, a place of just real unconditional giving and receiving and sharing. And so it is reducing the expectations. It is reducing the fantasies. It is just coming back to I have all of that I felt with them inside of me. And yes, it is unique and blessed when we get to experience it with someone else. So I'm not saying that, we don't want other people. We don't need other people in that sense. We do. Like, they're the beautiful reflectors of us. But just always going back to that, my well is full. I am full. And it's the mind, as you know, it is the mind that is creating this narrative and creating feelings. And it is most likely at a cellular level, an emotion that you have felt for many years. And so, dare I say, maybe a tiny bit of addiction. For some people, it's an addiction to abandonment. It's an addiction to fear. It's there's like, and I say addiction kind of loosely, but what I mean is that you're so used to responding to relationships in a certain way with a certain fear, a certain experience that you've had. And so, and it's usually loss. It's usually abandonment. It's usually like, I can't experience that without them. And while that is true to some degree, we can experience blissfully neutral states without them, whoever them is. And that is, enlightenment. It doesn't have to be like full-blown enlightenment like Buddha, but it is like where we are really practicing ourselves to be in this place where we know that it's all within ourselves. And so I think this feels like just such a juicy example, an opportunity in your life to not focus on the sadness, right? So I'm just looking back at the question. Okay. Oh, I've got more here. Okay. So the next day, the sadness that comes, not focusing on that, but going back and focusing on the great love or the great intimacy or the great pleasure, like just the physical pleasure, but just not attaching the stories to it. Okay, agreed. It's not actually about him, as I know the bond we have. But when we aren't physically together, I want to be able to fill my own cup and not only rely on him or any man. Yes. I think, I don't know when that part of the question came in, but I think I went into that. Yeah, that's the best part, is that when we are able to be with a beloved, that we just can cherish that time, because we know that we're not going to be glued to them 24/7. And so when we are with them, that we really enjoy it. And when we're not with them, that we honor that, yeah, I feel that tug. I feel that, like I want to be with them. And that you do that, catch yourself, I'm just repeating now, but catch yourself away from the sadness and into the gladness. I don't know, into the like, oh, I remember what that feels like. And I want to hold that. I want to hold that feeling. And with the word anticipation comes, but I feel I say that with a little caution, because again, the anticipation, if we put it into the lens of future fantasy or future expectation, then we just are setting ourselves up for the possibility of disappointment. So when we hold that feeling in us in a way that we are really feeling the energy with that person and the bond or the relationship that we have with them at whatever level, and we're just grateful for that bond, I think you're going to start to feel yourself just fill back up. You're going to fill back up to, oh, yeah. So I'm not focused on not having it. I'm not focused on the sadness of not having it. I'm not focused on the fantasy of what it means if I don't have it. And I think that it really gets you back to, it gets you back to center. It gets you back to feeling blessed for that person in your life. Okay. Okay, so next question is, a dear friend betrayed me many years ago, and we fell out of friendship. She recently contacted me again, wanting to get together. I'm not sure if this is a good idea. How can I get clear on this? A couple of things come forward on this. One is, I would really feel into your body, because I'm getting that right now you're very focused on the storylines of the past, and that's fair. Anyone would. What I'm asking you to do is to just switch the mind and the heart and feel into the heart center and feel into what that friend meant to you and feel into where they may be coming from. So if you don't know exactly how to do this, because sometimes it's hard, I understand, like the somatic process is one that actually takes some time for us to really get back into our bodies, because we are from here up, most of us, most of our life, because we don't get taught how to sit and be anchored and be in meditation and all that. So it's taken years for me to be able to do this myself, where I can actually really feel in my body my own emotions and also use my intuition, my gut instinct of what do I feel about that person without using my head. And there's a difference. So try to set the storylines aside of what happened just momentarily and just feel into the connection that you had with that friend when it was good and why you were connected to them. So that would be step number one. Step number two is I would think about yourself and how you see that you may or may not have, hopefully you have, evolved from the last time you communicated with them. How have you evolved? Like where have you come in your life, in your journey, your spiritual journey, your feelings about friendship and how you navigate friendship? Because chances are between them and now, there's probably been a lot of other friends that you currently have or have had. And then just say, is there a pattern that I have? There may not be. This might be a one-off thing, but the exercise is still super important. That you look into yourself and say, is there a pattern about me losing friends? And if so, or me kicking friends out of my life? And if so, what is that thread? Don't be hard on yourself, though. That's super important. Do not be hard on yourself in this situation, because you want to do this exercise for awareness, not for self-critique. Big difference. And try to understand what you've learned. And then the third step would be, knowing how I felt about them in the depths of our friendship, knowing what I've learned now and where I've evolved myself to, how do I feel? Step 3, how do I really feel about reconnecting with them? Chances are you might actually feel really excited, or maybe you just feel curious, or maybe you feel absolutely not. But if you felt absolutely not, you wouldn't be asking me the question. So I feel like the curiosity is there. I feel like there is, I do get like a little flame here, a little pilot light on for you wanting to rekindle this friendship. The fourth thing I would say is that if you do then realize that, yes, I want to leverage that curiosity and that excitement, that you don't place expectations on what the first conversation may feel like or look like. Chances are it's going to be awkward. It doesn't have to be, and it might not be, but the chances are that it'll feel awkward because you're both going to be coming from a place of old hurt and new optimism. And so that, just hold that and cherish that when you go to get on the call or you go to meet them, and breathe. Just breathe. Before you get on the phone, just take a deep breath. Or if you're, going to meet with them, just take a deep breath. And when you're with them, if you feel that awkwardness and you both feel a little bit nervous and you're both like, like you just feel your body's a little tense, say, you know what? I am so happy that we're together. I really am looking forward to having this conversation with you. But right now, can we just take a deep breath, and just do it together? And look them in the eyes. And then when you're in that conversation, feel in your heart what you felt from before. And try to keep the storylines in your mind of the memories at bay. Because the whole point of even making the effort to get together with them is to just see where they're at in their heart and to see where you're at in your heart. And you might find out that, wow, you've both come a long way and you've grown a lot. And you might learn all the things that they took away from that situation that helps you heal, or vice versa, or both. So I would go into it, and look, if it all blows up, I have a feeling it's not going to. But if it all blows up and you just feel like, oh my gosh, this was terrible, and they just came after me, or I went after them, or we got right back into that energy, then just say thank you. And you can even say it right there with them, thank you for this time. I feel that we're both still not in the same, whatever words you want to use, like, yeah, I would say vibrational resonance, but that's not always the most common way to refer to it. But we're just not in the same energy right now that feels conducive to have a better conversation. And I want that so much, but it's not happening. Can we just pause and, maybe we revisit this in a week, or maybe we just let it go. And then, you go back and you just say to yourself, more from the heart, more from the gut, not from the head. Like, what is it that I called in for my growth with this friend? Because if you don't get it with them, like what it is within you, you're going to attract another friend. And that's why I was also encouraging you to think about, is there a pattern here? And what is that pattern? But what is it about me? Not just about them. Okay. I see we're down to the end of the hour here. I don't know how that happens. It always goes so fast. Thank you. I see your comments. I really appreciate it. Great show today. Thanks for the insights. Thank you. Amazing wisdom and heart, as always. I appreciate you every week. If you're on with me live or you're watching on replay, you can always go to bethbell.me/question, submit your question there, or put comments in the show, and I'll pick them up for next week. But I love having you here with me live. The engagement is super fun. And if you want additional support, you can always go to bethbell.me. There's sessions you can book. There's lots of materials, lots of books that get into deep awakening material, like the Awakening and Healing Handbook. There's the Psychedelics Resource Guide. There's also the Herpes Handbook. And of course, there's the book Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics, which is all about unraveling the mind to unveil illusion. So many, many things and resources that you can tap into. All right. Until next week, I am wishing you so much bliss and love on the journey. Namaste.